Hi, I am Dr. Felice Gersh, your integrative OBGYN. And for this episode, I'm going to talk to you about a new article that I am so proud of because I authored it. And it was just published in the preprint version, and it will be coming out in print in the very prestigious journal Progress in Cardiovascular Disease. Now, the name of my article is Estrogen and Cardiovascular Disease. And I'll bet you're not shocked by the title because those of you who know me know that my favorite hormone in the universe is estrogen. And I was so privileged to share my paper in terms of writing it and editing it. I was the primary writer, but I had input from my team, my illustrious team, consisting of 4 other amazing doctors: Dr. James O'Keefe, Dr. Andrew Elagizi, Dr. Carl Lavie, who goes by Chip, he's my good buddy as well, and Dr. Jari Laukkanen, and he is from Finland. So this team with me came up with this amazing idea. Actually, it was originally mine, to write this paper, although it was Dr. Lavie who picked the journal that he knew was fantastic and would be a perfect place to have this article published. So I got to tell my story about my belief in hormones, and I got to pitch that hormones should be used very liberally to treat women during the menopausal years. So why is estrogen so important for cardiovascular health, to prevent cardiovascular disease? Well, it gets back to the original story of estrogen. Estrogen, the master hormone of homeostasis, regulating all metabolic functions in the body. And remember, metabolism is the creation, utilization, distribution, storage of energy. And what organ needs an enormous amount of energy? Well, it is the heart. And what is essential in the body to deliver oxygen and nutrition to all the different organs of the body, and also to transport the immune cells, all of the lymphocytes, the white cells, the mast cells and neutrophils, and monocytes and macrophages throughout the body to create, when necessary, the inflammatory response, and then to help with the healing response. Well, you need arteries and you need veins, you need the vascular system. All of that together, the arteries, the veins, and the heart comprise the cardiovascular system. Well, in order for a woman to be functional as a reproductive creature, which she is, whether she wants to be a reproductive creature or not, that's what she was created to be. Remember, we humans are the only species on planet Earth that works to control our reproductive destiny so that we have babies when and if we want. And I'm all for that. But understanding that the body of the female has evolved for successful reproduction. That means every organ system must be healthy in order to sustain a pregnancy and allow the woman to deliver, to breastfeed, and to repeat the process several times over. That means you need every organ system, and certainly the cardiovascular system, to be optimally healthy. So estrogen, the life hormone of the female body, is essential to maintain the health and function of the cardiovascular system. Throughout the entire cardiovascular system, there are estrogen receptors. So let's go through a couple of these. We know that in the heart, it is essential to produce energy. Well, the energy structures, the organelles of the cells, are called mitochondria. And the mitochondria create energy. Now, in order for that to happen, you have to have estradiol. That's the estrogen that is produced by ovaries. Now, you cannot create energy optimally in a mitochondria without having estradiol. As well, when you have the production of energy, there are byproducts of that process called superoxide, two oxygen molecules. This is highly reactive. This creates inflammation and oxidative stress in the mitochondria. In order to get rid of this superoxide, you need to have an enzyme, manganese superoxide dismutase. It turns out that estradiol is essential for the function of that enzyme. Without that functioning enzyme, the mitochondria will die because the superoxide cannot escape the mitochondria. When you have this enzyme, this superoxide is turned into hydrogen peroxide, which can then diffuse out of the mitochondria into the cell where it can be converted into harmless water. So it is essential to have estradiol for proper production of energy in the heart. Now, what happens after menopause and during the menopausal transition is you don't have enough estradiol produced by the ovaries. So you have problems with the mitochondria in the heart. Not only does estradiol, is that required for functioning and health of the mitochondria, but there are metabolites of estradiol, like, for example, 2-methoxyestradiol. This is a metabolite, a byproduct that is produced through the liver when estrogen is going through the process of biotransformation. And there are actually receptors in the heart muscle for this metabolite of estradiol. In addition, there are other receptors, and we don't even know what binds to them. But whatever it is, it won't work without the presence of estradiol. We call them estrogen-related receptors. So in total, without enough estradiol, you have an energy-deficient heart. And in women, this can lead to what is called mild diastolic dysfunction. Now, in the heart, there are basically two stages of how the heart is functioning. One is contracting, when the blood is spewed out of the heart into the arteries, into the aorta, the pulmonary artery, and when it relaxes and fills. So this process of contract, relax, empty, fill. So it's the filling phase that's called diastolic. It also equates to the lower blood pressure measurement. Like if your blood pressure is 120/80, the 120 is called the systolic blood pressure, and the 80 would be the diastolic. The lower blood pressure is what would be measured when the heart is relaxing, not pumping, because you don't have that blood coming out of the heart, increasing the pressure in the artery. Well, the phase of the heart where it's relaxing is also called diastolic. And in women on an echocardiogram, you can see that it is stiffer. It is an energy deficient heart. This is almost exclusively found in women, and it develops around menopause, and it is extremely common and often completely neglected, even by cardiologists, because the differences between the male and the female heart are not well appreciated. They haven't been, and we're trying to change that. And in women, down the road, this can lead to a form of heart failure, which can be fatal, called heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. So this is a really critical difference between male and female hearts, and where estrogen is so critical. Estrogen in the form of estradiol, E2, the estrogen made by ovaries. Now, what else is critical? Well, the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, for example, controls the electrical system of the heart in great measure. And in women, without enough estradiol, you end up with an overload of sympathetic relative to parasympathetic. In other words, more stress output to that heart. So that is taxing to the heart. It makes the heart beat faster. And women around the transition into menopause will often experience palpitations and irregular heartbeats. And they are typically treated with a type of drug called beta blockers, which work on the sympathetic receptors to slow the heartbeat and make the heart pump less powerfully. It's like a relaxant to the heart. Well, estrogen helps to regulate the autonomic nervous system and hopefully to prevent this overload of the sympathetic versus parasympathetic output to the heart to maintain a better, more healthy heartbeat and heart rate. And what about the arteries? Well, there is a type of an enzyme called endothelial nitric oxide synthase. This enzyme helps to create a very critical antioxidant gas called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide helps to maintain the vascular system in a good state of health so that the arteries are not constricted. So it helps to prevent the development of hypertension, high blood pressure. It also helps to maintain the health of the lining, the endothelium, the lining that's inside the arteries. Because if you have an unhealthy intima, the lining of the arteries, you can get cracks and fissures that can carry oxidized cholesterol that is now being carried by white blood cells, and I'll explain that in a minute, in through the cracks of the artery that where the lining is damaged, where it gets stuck inside the wall, creating the collection of basically fatty cholesterol garbage. That is what is plaque. If it becomes highly inflamed and unstable, it can rupture. And when it ruptures into the artery where the blood is flowing, if a little clot forms, which that's what happens, like think of like an exploding pimple, a little clot forms. And if that clot breaks off and travels downstream, if it's in the heart, in the coronary arteries, it will create a heart attack, which can lead to fatal arrhythmias, like ventricular fibrillation, which is a killer, and women die more from their first heart attacks than men. Or it can lead to, if you survive, it can lead to damage to the heart muscle, which can also go on to lead to heart failure, which is horrible and can lead to quite rapid death. In addition, in the brain, it can lead to a stroke. By age 65, women suffer more from strokes and ruptured aneurysms than do men. So don't think that that halo of estrogen lasts forever. By age 65, 75% of women have high blood pressure. Estradiol helps to prevent all of this. The science is clear. And there are other systems in the body involving the vascular system and the blood, for example, platelets. So nitric oxide helps to prevent platelet aggregation, clumping of platelets that can cause inappropriate clotting. And another very important molecule called the prostacyclines, which are also anti-inflammatory and anticoagulants and prevent unnecessary inappropriate clotting, that is also regulated by estradiol. And what about cholesterol? Cholesterol is really important for many functions in the body. All the steroid hormones come from cholesterol, cell membranes require cholesterol, the brain. But after menopause, you have more inflammation in the body, which creates oxidative stress and oxidation or rancidity of cholesterol. Once cholesterol becomes oxidized, it is no longer properly recognized for removal from the blood by the liver through the receptors, the LDL receptors on the liver. They don't recognize oxidized or rancid cholesterol. And so the body recognizes it, the immune cells, as damaged tissue. So this oxidized cholesterol is gobbled up by the gobblers called the macrophages. And they're circulating in the blood and they get full of this oxidized cholesterol that happens after menopause. And then they are called foam cells because they're all full of this stuff. It looks like suds. They call them foam cells. And these immune cells are also attracted to damage. That's why they gobbled up the damaged cholesterol. And if you have damaged artery walls, then they're going to line up along the artery walls on the inside where the blood is flowing, and they can work their way in. And once again, that can create the plaque, the buildup of this gunk. And once you have that inflammation, it attracts more immune cells, and it can grow and grow, become unstable with inflammation and rupture, and lead, as I mentioned, to these fatal events. So estradiol regulates the receptors, the LDL receptors on the liver to work properly. It also works with an enzyme called peroxidase 1, also known as PON1, that helps to prevent the oxidation of cholesterol. So there are so many different mechanisms that are controlled in the cardiovascular system by estrogen. This is such a huge deal. Now, the liver makes 90% of all the cholesterol that circulates in the body. The enzyme that is regulated and downregulated by the statins, the drugs that are used to lower cholesterol, that very same enzyme is actually regulated or modulated by estrogen. And when you don't have enough estrogen and that whole system becomes out of order, and that enzyme is not being properly regulated, the liver makes too much cholesterol. So after menopause, the vast majority of women will make too much cholesterol. So estrogen in the form of estradiol can control the health of the heart muscle, the electrical system involved in the heart, the energy production in the heart, the health of the arteries, maintaining the health of the lining, maintaining proper relaxation of the arteries, maintaining proper cholesterol production, and preventing oxidation of cholesterol. And that's not everything, but that's plenty for today's lesson. So I had the opportunity to write this article with my amazing team of renowned physicians, and it now is published, and I am so proud. And my ending in the article was basically a plea that even though we don't have a huge number of clinical studies, long-term clinical studies using bioidentical physiologic levels that are created with bioidentical hormones, and we don't have enough studies. We have enough to show safety. And we have science. We have so much science to show the sanity of prescribing these hormones to women. And the earlier in the process of ovarian aging, the better. So please understand that this is just one organ system that has so many different ways that exist, that estrogen maintains and sustains life. That is why estrogen, my favorite hormone, is the hormone of life and of cardiovascular health. Thank you so much for joining me.